An interesting development in the FTX story is its impact on the celebrities who endorsed FTX. Now, while Kim Kardashian was fined over $1 million earlier this year for promoting a failed coin, a class action lawsuit against celebrities doing TV commercials feels different. My next guest, Emily Lyons, is an established entrepreneur in the brand and marketing space, as well as an influencer herself. Emily, welcome to the Daily Drop.
Thank you so much, Bobby.
So look, it's a really troubling sort of theme that you see emerging across all business media. But let's start right at the beginning. Let's start with influencers. So how would you define an influencer?
An influencer is really a person who has any ability to influence another person's actions. And generally speaking, that is their purchases, and that's usually done via social media. So it's building a community of people that trust and follow that person and any of the suggestions that they typically make.
And look, I know that you are an expert in this space, so we're just going to start here, sort of laying a foundation, then we're going to get into the implications. So let's talk a little bit about marketing. So how important are influencers, which you define so well, how important are influencers from a marketing perspective?
Oh, they're incredibly important. It can make or break a brand. And if used correctly, it can help build trust, credibility, further the audience. And so it's incredibly powerful.
And how much would you say that the average consumer trusts influencers?
Well, there was actually a study done this year with Nielsen, and they said over 90% of consumers from various markets trust people in their network, people that they know and follow. So I thought that was pretty cool.
And so, okay, and also just some clarity on you. So you, I believe you have like marketing agencies. Is that what is your business relationship in that space?
Yeah, so we have a marketing agency and we work on all different sides of influencers. So we will help book influencers, and then I also work as an influencer myself. So I see all the different angles with it.
Okay, so from your, because you really are, right? You're an influencer. Where you have like, I think it's like 200,000 followers on Instagram, and you have so many followers across so many platforms. But you also, you kind of rep influencers too, right? Because you have agencies. So what, within that sort of paradigm then, how valuable do you think influencers are?
They're incredibly valuable. I mean, consumer distrust is at an all-time high. So when we see an ad, we don't trust it. But when we're following someone and we're a part of their life and we're seeing them day in and day out, we feel like we know them and that we can trust them. So when they come to us and they promote something, whether it's a product or a brand, we trust their opinion far more than we would seeing a commercial or an ad in a magazine.
So I've had this conversation before because we did an influencer episode. It is interesting though, right? Because before you could say that actors, musicians, these were sort of the celebrities. Now it really does seem like the social media influencers are the sort of contemporary celebrities. Do you think that's fair?
They are, absolutely. It's wild. And I've seen this with a lot of the influencers that we represent. They've got millions of followers now, and they go out and they've got people lining up to take photos with them.
So, I mean, it's an interesting thing, right? Because as the sort of like business climate has pivoted, you definitely see some backlash. We're going to get into the backlash specifically with FTX later. But do you think it's a little bit, I don't know, precarious, vulnerable to be an influencer?
I think it's getting a lot more than it used to be. They're being held a lot more accountable for the actions of the brands and the companies that they work with.
So if we're evaluating the celebrity space, however people want to broadly define that, is it fair to say that that is sort of like the next sort of generation of social media influencers, that's kind of their future, if you see how celebrities are being treated?
I would say so, yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's rightfully so. There needs to be some sort of accountability.
Yeah, but I guess the question is how much accountability, right? Because as we get into FTX, we're going to start talking about lawsuits. They're in Europe. They have this thing called MiCA, which is legislations for crypto, where they're actually writing in punishments for celebrities. But let's get into brands in the next segment. I got Emily Lyons here on the Daily Drop. Welcome back. So Daily Drop. I got Emily Lyons. Okay, so we're talking about brands and influencers and culpability, right? Like how liable should celebrities and influencers be, especially post FTX? Let's start talking a little bit about brands first, right? So we were defining influencers, analyzing influencers. How important is it for the influencers and brands to align?
It's incredibly important. I think if you work as an influencer with brands and companies that you don't align with, that you don't truly believe in, you'll lose trust in your audience, and then you lose everything.
Yeah, because you're starting to see backlash, right? And it seems like it's like when there's this bifurcation, there's an incongruity. So I guess that's my question. Like, what happens if the influencer brand and the product brand clash?
If the influencer brand and the product brand clash, at best, it'll just be an unsuccessful campaign and maybe you'll lose money. But at worst, people will be upset and they'll call you out on it. They'll call you out on just taking money and not truly believing in the product. And being a good influencer is all about having that trust with your community, being honest and transparent with them. So if you lose that, you're not going to be able to continue being an influencer for very long.
It's interesting that you're talking about that interaction, right? Because that's actually what's new, right? If you think about social media, let's call them celebrities versus I don't know, Web 2 celebrities, right? Traditional media celebrities. If you didn't like what Tom Cruise had to say on Oprah, you could go to the internet, but you couldn't talk to Tom Cruise. Whereas a social media celebrity, you could like slide into their DMs, right? You can like attack them on Twitter. Like there's really an interaction that's different.
They're much more available, and it makes it that much harder because, like you said, you can slide into their messages. So if they do something that isn't liked, that is offensive, or the brand that they're collaborating with is, they get millions of hate messages every single day. It's hard. And you don't have that level of protection like we used to see with celebrities.
Right. And with the stakes increasing, do you think that a spokesperson becomes an extension of the brand that they represent?
100%. They are the human extension of the brand. They become the face of the brand. And that's why it's so important that they are very selective with who they become a spokesperson for. Doing that due diligence to make sure that they are completely aligned with them and where they're going also in the future.
And we are going to get into FTX in the next segment, but it's interesting, the due diligence that you brought up, right? So, like, how much due diligence do you think people should be doing?
I mean, there's only so much really that an influencer can do that's available to them. But I think going as far as possible, asking the hard questions and just being really selective again with who they're actually going to partner with. Because when you are going to partner with, if you're going to partner with a fashion brand and you're going to promote some great clothing, that's a lot less risky than telling your audience to invest in something where they could potentially lose all their life savings. So being selective with the brands that you partner with overall.
It's interesting you say that though, right? So does that mean, because there's obviously a difference between being a financial advisor or being a celebrity who's in a commercial for a hedge fund or something like that, right? So how do you differentiate between those two ideas?
I mean, are you an expert in that area? Should you really be giving advice on what people should invest in? What is your knowledge in that? What is your background in that? How can you do proper due diligence if you don't have a background in that? So, I mean, I have turned down so many different partnerships that would have been incredible money because it didn't align with me and because I couldn't do proper due diligence on them. I didn't know how to understand those things properly. Would I partner with, a crypto company? No, probably not. Because I don't know how to properly research it and make sure that what I'm telling people is genuine and to understand the risks and the risks that I'm putting my community in.
So do you think it's valid then that some of these celebrities are getting this backlash?
I think now it is, but I mean, I can see it from both angles. They have to make a living, but also I think it's flown under the radar for far too long. And there hasn't been enough rules and regulations around celebrities and influencers and what they can and can't promote, and have some sort of accountability as well behind them, because right now they kind of just can walk away scot-free with the paycheck, and their community is the ones now that have lost so much.
Well, look, speaking of community, the FTX community is sort of in tatters right now, but we've got more Emily Lyons here on the Daily Drop. We're back to the Daily Drop. Okay, I've got Emily Lyons. Yes, the Emily Lyons. Okay, many FTX influencers are being sued for promoting FTX. Is this fair?
Yes and no. I think it's a new area, so it's really hard to say definitively yes or no. I do think there needs to be some accountability, but at the end of the day, experts didn't see this coming. So how could an influencer see it coming? I mean, they could have done the best due diligence that they could have done. They could have personally put their money into it. But at the end of the day, nobody saw this coming. And nobody, I don't think, wanted this to happen. So it's new grounds, but I would say they need to be accountable in some way, whether or not that's a lawsuit. I'm not exactly sold on that idea.
So let me ask you a question in terms of, because I know that you have a lot of branding experience, influencing, all this experience, right? It seems to me, and I am very new to sort of learning about all of these things, but it seems that the crypto Web3 space is getting more criticism from a sort of influencer celebrity standpoint than I remember for any other industry. Is that fair?
Absolutely. And it's absolutely getting a lot more criticism because it is so risky, because it can be so risky, and because things change so quickly. And like I was saying, when you've got this community that trusts you and you are promoting these things without really clearly communicating the risks with your audience, I don't know. I think it should be getting that criticism.
See, there's definitely like a shift that's happened. I'm trying to understand why. That's why I'm doing this show. Because if you think about Bernie Madoff, right? This is, 15 years ago now. It's not like there were all these stories of like all the people who were involved in Bernie Madoff, and he introduced Bernie to this person, here's his concierge, and here's this celebrity used to hang out. Like, you'd hear none of those. And I'm sure that there's just as many people responsible for that, enablers maybe. But it seems like now, post-FTX, anybody who had, I don't know, any sort of like contribution to get the name out there is guilty. Do you think that's fair?
Well, social media is kind of changing things in general with that. Whenever we see things happen in the world, anybody that's connected with that thing. So with Balenciaga, we saw that nightmare happen recently with their campaign that rolled out. And then every single person that had ever really done a campaign with Balenciaga was now being crushed on social media with, you have to release a statement, you have to cancel them, all of those things. And so social media has changed things in general. So not just in this situation, but all across the board with how people are called out that, like you said, that introduce somebody to somebody, and then that person ends up being a scam artist, or that business ends up being a failure.
Okay, well, let me ask you a question. Like for FTX specifically, like how responsible should those celebrities be for the impact of FTX's failure?
I don't think that necessarily in this situation, they should be financially necessarily responsible because, like I said, nobody saw this coming. But I do think that this is a great opportunity to learn and implement some things moving forward. So I do think there needs to be rules and regulations for influencers specifically and celebrities with promoting different products and brands, and how they are held accountable if something does happen in the future, and committing to that.
It's a pretty hot take, to be honest. Like I never thought about that. That's brilliant. So that actually raises questions. So does that mean there actually is no set of standards for defining what an influencer is and how they should conduct themselves?
It's pretty murky waters at this point. Yeah. There's a lot that people can get away with and a lot that's not regulated. And that's the other thing. I think that there should be certain brands that aren't allowed to be promoted. Things like something that could hurt somebody. So whether it's alcohol or tobacco, or things that could potentially cause them to lose a lot of money, whether that's crypto investing all across the board.
So you're starting to see, I think I referenced it earlier, but Europe is starting to do that, where they're actually writing in essentially influencer consequences, codes of conduct in the legislation. Is that something that you would advocate?
Absolutely. I think that's incredible. 100%.
Okay, well, look, I guess we're going to start a committee. It'll be you, me,
let's do it.
Kevin O'Leary, Tom Brady, and we will set the standards for influencers for a new moral post-FTX world. We've got Emily Lyons here on The Daily Drop. Welcome back to The Daily Drop. We've got Emily Lyons. Okay, let's try and arrive at some sort of resolution, because although you, me, Tom Brady, and Kevin O'Leary, we can figure a lot of things out together, but that'll probably take a long time. But okay, so we're starting to see significant backlash against the celebrities who promoted FTX. So do you think the influencer industry will be forced to adapt?
I do. And I think that'll be a great thing. And I think introducing better transparency about how that influencer benefits from that transaction, that promotion, that collaboration. So people actually know, okay, they're making X amount of dollars moving forward, but just full transparency across the board so people understand more about what paid promotions are.
And I buy this argument, and I buy the positive solution. But I do worry still about the impact. Also, me being an actor, for many years before this show, right? Because, okay, so if celebrities and influencers are now culpable when things go wrong, will we see less celebrities willing to stick their necks out?
I think yes, 100%. But I think that's great because people are going to be more selective with who they partner with. And you see that, some of the big names, some of the Kardashians, where they'll partner with every single brand or opportunity out there. And that's great in some capacities, but I think that we really need to be more selective with the brands that we are pushing and putting our name behind, and really choosing one that are operating with great ethics that we know are through and through great companies that we can trust with putting our name behind.
And I know that you do this, right? For the world, I met Emily on Clubhouse, and I think that of all the people I met there, I do think that for you as an influencer, I haven't seen anybody more discerning and selective, right? So this is really your ethos, right? It's kind of like you will only attach your name to a product you 1,000% believe in.
Always. And, I turn down so many collaborations and hold out for the ones that really align with me and that I really believe in. And when you do that, you can charge higher rates. There's a lot more benefits to it because you don't promote so many products. But when you are promoting every single business that comes your way, you're diluting your brand as an influencer and your partnership capabilities. But it is so important that, you're just aligning with brands that are beneficial in both ways. Not just from the monetary perspective, but also for your own brand. Because not only are you becoming a spokesperson for you, but you're aligning yourself with everything that they stand for.
Yeah, look, and this, to be fair, you've been articulating this for the 2 years that I've known you, right? You're very, very consistent with this message. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit because we are looking at the resolution here. What do you think is the biggest lesson from the FTX disaster from an influencer perspective?
I think that the biggest lesson is to not collaborate with partnerships that have too much risk. So if you're going to do a collaboration with a crypto company where your community could potentially lose a lot of money, that's a no-go. If you're going to collaborate with a company that's too outspoken and offensive and operating with poor ethics, that's a no-go. I think that is the biggest lesson moving forward, is that we really need to be so much more selective with who we're actually partnering with and promoting, and staying away from anything that could cost our community money, especially because I don't know about you, but I don't want to be responsible for somebody losing their retirement funds or being able to put food on their table.
Look, I mean, I agree with everything you're saying. I guess for me, the question is, and we only have 40 seconds, I definitely want you to come back on the show because you're amazing. And thank you so much for coming. But how much due diligence do you do? You know?
I mean, you can do everything across the board on that specific company, but I think we really need to look at too, is this an area that I want to be promoting? What is the outcome for my community? What am I doing for them? And so at the end of the day, that's what I'm always asking myself. What am I doing for them when I'm promoting this? Am I actually genuinely...
You know what? Let's you, me, Tom Brady, and Kevin O'Leary, we are going to get a pizza. We're going to figure this out. Emily Lyons, thank you for coming to the Daily Drop. The FTX collapse has become a search for fault. Are celebrities as liable as the executives themselves? Can you blame an influencer for taking a check without doing full due diligence on their employer? The courts will ultimately decide who is to blame for the FTX disaster, and the results of their investigations may transform many protocols across various industries. We'll see you next time on The Daily Drop.